Christina Grimmie was a beloved YouTuber, singer, and songwriter. I watched her on YouTube throughout high school as she uploaded cover after cover of some of my favorite songs. She was instantly recognizable by her early to mid 2000s scene look with black bangs that usually covered one of her eyes, dark makeup, and edgy clothing. She loved Paramore, my favorite band, and she loved The Legend of Zelda. If you are a young person on YouTube from around 2011 to 2014, you should recognize the name Kurt Hugo Schneider. He is a YouTuber who uploaded music video quality covers of YouTuber singing stars at the time, including Sam Sui and Madeline Bailey. Google any of those names if you don't recognize them. Statistically, you've probably heard one of their covers. Christina Grimmie and Sam Sui's cover of Just a Dream by Nelly is Kurt Hugo Schneider's most viewed video to date, with 235 million views uploaded on November 21st, 2010. In 2014, Christina appeared as a contestant on The Voice, coached by Adam Levine of Maroon 5. This was such a profound moment for the online community, as YouTube personalities crossing into mainstream was still fairly rare. By this point, Christina had released several albums with original music, my favorite of hers being Liar Liar. She made it to the final three but did not win the competition. On June 10, 2016, Christina Grimmie was shot and killed by a crazed fan at a meet and greet. The man was visibly socially awkward, but Christina opened her arms to greet him with a hug. She died from her injuries at the hospital. I was devastated by this news. I called my gran for support, and trying to make sense of this tragedy, my gran could only come up with, maybe God needed a singer. This brought more tears. To this day, I will always carry that touching sentiment with me, that sometimes maybe a higher power calls us home before our time because our talents, light, and life are needed elsewhere. I was house sitting that weekend. I was sleeping uncomfortably in an all-pink room catching up on Degrassi Next Class on Netflix. I mustered the will to crawl to the piano and film a short cover of Pray by Justin Bieber, my favorite cover Christina Grimmie uploaded on YouTube. Just 2 days later, on June 12, 2016, 29-year-old Omar Mateen walked into Pulse nightclub, a gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida, and committed what was known then as the most deadly mass shooting in the United States, killing 49 people and injuring another 53. As an empath, I was crippled with grief as this senseless gun violence unfolded back to back. The debate then was gun control versus the mentally ill. People have feared the idea of gun control for decades, but in the last 9 years since 2016, little has been done to prevent future senseless violence. Now, however, I fear we're witnessing a violent shift from blaming individuals to blaming transgender people as a whole, black people as a whole, and most recently, leftists as a whole. The conservatives' boogeyman under the bed is getting bigger and bigger, encompassing more and more people unrelated to the tragedy that occurred. And in the place of empathy, outrage, anger, and threats of retaliation towards someone, anyone. This is me processing the grief I felt because of recent tragedies that occurred within the United States in the last 6 months, and the behaviors I've noticed from others as responses to these tragedies. The weekend of February 8th, 2025, I was in Buffalo for the weekend with my partner. We paid way too much for a hotel stay to watch the Maple Leafs versus the Buffalo Sabres. It was a blowout game, and somehow Buffalo pulled off an 8-2 win. Less than a month later, blocks from the most popular part of downtown Buffalo, 2 gay men were killed in their homes by an intruder. The suspect had been caught trying to break into several homes and cars that evening. While his victims were gay, authorities said that there was no connection to a hate crime. I felt as isolated in my grief that day as I did with the Pulse nightclub shooting. LGBTQ+ people were the victims of senseless violence, and the Buffalo murders barely made national news. To take it one step further, I noticed the couple had cats from some of their photos, and being an obsessed cat dad myself, I still find myself wondering what those babies went through and if they're okay. I'm jumping ahead here a little bit. I'm forced to wonder under what circumstances could the need for revenge come out of a scenario like this. To want revenge on all black people because the killer was black is such a foreign concept to me, And similarly, to call for revenge on all straight people by gay people feels equally foreign. My mind is too engulfed in grief, empathy, and compassion to even consider making their deaths political or to use them for my own agenda for likes and retweets. All of what I described here seems to be the popular response to similar tragedies that gain more attention. Normally, I wouldn't include this bit because we have been trained as a society to let these types of things go, to not worry about a minority of hate when we have a majority of love. But some of the comments I saw that day were sickening. People celebrating the death of two gay people, saying God did this to them because they were gay. To acknowledge them is to almost give them power in a way, but there they were. And they were ignored by news media, the leaders of our state and nation, and by most people who expressed sympathy for the story. On June 14th, 2025, Melissa Hortman, her husband, and her dog were shot and killed in their home. I'm not going to act like I'm better or more informed than anyone here. I'll admit that when I first heard these names, they meant nothing to me. I had never heard of this person before, but attached to the headline was that she was a Democrat lawmaker, and that is what initially incited a reaction in me. I watched the right erupt with joy and make jokes on Twitter, and when asked if he reached out to the Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, the President of the United States had this to say. I don't really call him. Look, he appointed this guy to a position. I think the governor of Minnesota is so whacked out, I'm not calling him. Why would I call him? I could call and say, hi, how you doing? The guy doesn't have a clue. He's a mess. I could be nice and call, but why waste my time? The president did also tweet that he was briefed on the situation and condemned the violence. I've been able to see politics from outside myself. I've been able to step out of situations and view both sides objectively. What I've discovered is that tragedies occur in a media cycle. Something bad happens to the left, the right rejoices with glee on the internet, posting jokes and memes. The left waits for their revenge. Then something bad happens on the right. The left rejoices with glee on the internet, posting jokes and memes. This is, of course, not indicative of either side as a whole. Democratic lawmakers and personalities were quick to share their condolences on social media for Charlie Kirk. But we have been so damaged and divided as a society that the only comments I could see under those condolences were threats of violence, insults, and accusations that they were the cause of what happened. American people are trapped in this cycle. We are taught from a young age to treat others as we want to be treated and about karma, that what goes around comes around. But we don't seem to be capable of recognizing how it feels when we are treated poorly by the other side, and the first chance we get, we throw it right back. An unfortunate truth of humanity in this day and age is that there will always be people celebrating tragedies and posting memes and making fun. If you take out the politics, you'll see that the same things happen no matter what. This lack of empathy and compassion is a human issue, not dependent on political sides. On March 13, 2020, Breonna Taylor was killed by police officers who fired rounds into her home. She was a 26-year-old medical worker, and when police showed up to her home in pedestrian clothing, her boyfriend fired a warning shot, mistaking them for intruders. The police fired 32 shots into the home, killing Breonna Taylor. I watched America take sides. Team police officer versus team African American. In the same way female rape victims are often blamed with prosecution asking them what they were wearing when the attack happened, people performed mental gymnastics to justify Breonna's murder. Why didn't they just follow the law? This is why you don't date criminals. Utter lack of compassion, utter lack of empathy. On May 25, 2020, Derek Chauvin kneeled on George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. During this time, Floyd continually pleaded, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe." The whole thing was caught on video. During the last 2 minutes, Floyd went unconscious and had no pulse. Chauvin kept his knee on Floyd's neck. Floyd had a criminal record. Sentiments were shared such as, "I don't like that people are making him out to be some hero. He wasn't a good guy." In my history class, I discussed the Eighth Amendment and the death penalty with my students. I asked them what kind of crime they think is worthy of the death penalty. They always have great suggestions. I asked them if using a counterfeit $20 bill deserves a death penalty. Their mouths open in shock and confusion. No, they resoundingly respond, but that is the crime George Floyd paid for with his life. The Black Lives Matter movement gave right-wingers ammunition they would never run out of and still use today. People forget the countless peaceful protests, but they remember the riots. It was clear politicians cared more about Target being looted than lives being lost at the hands of police brutality. It's reminiscent of when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. The government was initially and largely unresponsive. After the levees broke, the citizens of New Orleans were left to their own devices for weeks, struggling to survive. They started looting stores and sharing food with the community. The government and community quickly rebranded this as criminal activity, that New Orleans had become a lawless city where law and order needed to be reinstated. White citizens in New Orleans expressed excitement in hunting down black people, and some black people were shot for sport in the name of protecting communities. On August 22, 2025, Irina Zarutska was brutally murdered on a train in Charlotte. She was 23 years old, and her family came to the United States from the Ukraine to escape the war. The whole thing was caught on video, and with how social media is now, I've seen pieces of it that I never would have wanted to see. It's terrifying. It's heartbreaking. It's horrific. It's disgusting. But I wasn't given much time to process the tragedy itself before right-wing public figures started calling for action against black people as a whole. For the first time in a long time, the right had succumbed to an immigrant's plight of pursuing the American dream. And I reckoned with the thought of, was it because she was blonde and pretty and white? And perhaps I wouldn't have been forced to stretch my brain to think that at all if not for the outrage against African American people for the action of one individual. I hope it goes without saying that I'm not blaming every right-wing person, but many people will scoff at comments made on social media. It's easy not to pay attention. Just delete Twitter. I don't pay attention to politics. Those are just things that stupid people say. But social media is where the truth comes out. People say what they really feel, unfiltered, and hide behind their burner accounts with a dozen or less followers. Those are real people. Well, sometimes they're bots. But social media shouldn't be thrown out completely when discussing how people express themselves. If you're a right-wing person and no one in your right-wing circle has expressed these same feelings, many on social media have. They are real, they exist. On September 5th, 2025, at a baseball game in Miami, a woman was caught on camera walking up to a father and son, and no, this isn't that kind of podcast episode. But for a week on social media, the baseball incident and the train stabbing were all that was circulating right-wing spaces on social media. It was eerie, as if both held the same amount of importance in the public social media sphere. So there's a public figure who made a career out of attacking my community, the LGBTQ+ community, the black community, the Jewish community, and more. In 2021, he called George Floyd a scumbag. In a 2024 podcast episode, he said, quote, "If I see a black pilot, I'm gonna be like, boy, I hope he's qualified," unquote. He believed women's intelligence was, quote, superficial at best, unquote, and should be caregivers to their children. He tweeted at Taylor Swift telling her she needed to submit to her husband. He was vehemently against trans people, he was against abortion, and most heinously expressed on an episode of Jubilee that his young daughter would be having her child if she was raped. I stand by freedom of speech in America. This man was entitled to his beliefs and loudly expounded them, garnering millions of young male followers. Like George Floyd, this man did not deserve to be publicly executed. The president called for flags to be lowered in his honor, though he never served in public office or in the military. Many people in my social media circles expressed grief for him, with some claiming he was just respectfully debating his ideas. And that hurt, because he spent his life putting headlines, tweets, and videos on my feed that directly attacked me and my communities. He stood by and debated his beliefs, but he was not respectful. Still, much of the left erupted in the same way I knew that habit would dictate. Many were disrespectful. There are many memes, there are many jokes, a cheap way to cash in on some social media engagement during a horrible incident. We didn't have a suspect right away, yet right-wing Twitter was calling for the execution of all leftists. So we went from blaming one mentally ill person in the past to blaming entire groups of people to now blaming an entire political ideology. If I was a psychologist, I'd create a new diagnosis called first-time derangement syndrome. It's a social and psychological phenomenon that occurs in societies where newsworthy tragedies happen daily, yet people act like everyone is the first one. Systematically, we're trained to cycle news stories in and out of our brains so that the media can cash in on stories before bombarding us with the next one. So we forget. And we forget quickly. And on September 10th, everyone forgot Melissa Hortman. The right forgot the political assassination of a Democrat. The left forgot being on the receiving end of hate, jokes, and memes. The president forgot to order the lowering of U.S. flags after her death. And we all forgot the high school shooting that took place on the same day in Colorado. The idea of fame and idolization haunts me. Socially, we've created a hierarchy of sympathy when it comes to death. Society decides as a whole who is most important and what actions should be taken that are most commemorative for certain people. Maybe people care more about Charlie Kirk than Melissa Hortman because he was famous on social media. Though, in a perfect world I would like to, I can't ask people to care as much about the death of someone they know versus the death of someone they don't. But the right has proven they're capable of that with Irina Zarutskat's murder. An unknown immigrant woman called for more outrage and more action than Melissa Hortman's death. Misplaced outrage is dangerous, and before we can all call for action, we first need to go back to compassion and empathy for one another as humans, with empathy being something Charlie Kirk was against. And despite how the right feels now about how the left is reacting to this tragedy, once the next one hits, the cycle will begin anew. To quote Christina Grimmie's cover of Justin Bieber, "I close my eyes and I can see a better day. I close my eyes and I pray." Thanks for listening.